Is the 20th. It's on the eve of the winter solstice. We're moving into the Christmas holiday season. By the end of this week, everybody will be touched by Christmas in some way, somehow, whether you like it or not. Every store you go into, they're going to be singing those Christmas carols. And down here in Georgia, it's real slick because I get treated to the best. It's like going to Uncle Laurel's house everywhere you go, because you hear the OJ's Christmas and you hear the New Edition Christmas, you hear the Michael Jackson Christmas, you hear the Mariah Carey Christmas. Ain't no Bing Crosby, ain't no Johnny Cash, none of that. I don't get any of those Christmas carols anywhere I go. I'm getting soul Christmas everywhere I go, and that's superb. That's one of the benefits of being here in Atlanta. Little side note: did you know that what's that song? What's the first Outcast song? Oh man, it starts off nothing but lax. What is it called? Oh no, not that one. What is it? Maybe is there the Player's Ball? That's what you said. It was crackly. You know, the Player's Ball is a Christmas song. Did you know that? The Player's Ball is a Christmas song. So when you go back and listen to it, you'll catch the references. But being here in the ATL, I guess that's just one of the little tidbits that you learn to make your life more complete. So my life feels more complete. I hope your life is more complete with that little tidbit. The Player's Ball is actually a Christmas song and an anthem at that. But all that to say that in this season, it's alive with a certain kind of a spirit, and everybody is going to be touched by it. And my hope and prayer is that everything that we do will make you um, poised to really enjoy the best aspects and the greatest virtues of this tradition, being the Orisha tradition. And because the holidays are so intense for some of us, and they permeate everything that goes on in our lives. I like to emphasize it to account for the fact that this is a significant time for us here in the West. And um, one thing that I'm very adamant about is that I don't want you to uh, be combative. I don't, you know what I mean, in the Christmas environment. We may not be celebrating Christmas. The whole cycle may not make any sense to us at all, as far as from a religious or cultural perspective. But we are governed by the motto, if you will, Isheshe Lagba, which tells us that our tradition is senior. We are the first ones. What we're doing now represents the original way. And that means we're the elders. Even though you might be chronologically the youth in your family, because you are associated with Isheshe, you're called upon to take a position of eldership and maturity and sobriety. So that means as the elder, you are making space for everybody, right? You're the venerable senior, and so you accommodate all of your children and your children's children. Whatever they're into, you accept them as a part of yours. They come from you. Now there are rules and there's structure and there's a thing that they have to embody in order to be a part of the team. But nonetheless, you are using the tradition to create bridges between you and your family. You're not using the tradition to set up walls and barriers between you and your family. So that's why I preface everything with the idea or the fact that we're moving into the holiday season. And my expectation of you is that you will go into the holiday season and you go to your family member's house and you will conduct yourself as a mature elder, right? You're not going to argue with people about the validity of Christmas, or the appropriateness of Christianity or any of that. That isn't what needs to happen at the dinner table. That's not what needs to happen. You choose the proper venue to have those kinds of conversations. Not that it's a taboo conversation that can't be had, but it's just something that is not meant to be a divisive subject, and you are not to be a divisive character in your family. You are a unifier of your family. You are a custodian of the ancestral memory, and so your duty is to invoke the wisdom of your ancestors and the purpose of your lineage, to make sure that permeates the spirit. And if they're praising Jesus and singing Christmas carols and all that all the while, but the ancestral spirit is felt and is unifying you and bringing people into a deeper sense of love and mutual respect, then that's perfect, right? That's perfect. Now, that's particularly important for us right now because when we look at what our present Itadogun is, we know that we have a certain amount of adversity, right? There's a certain amount of challenge that that characterizes this particular Itadogun cycle. And so what does that look like? The Odu that came for us is Odu OdiIrosun. Odi on the right, Irosun on the left. Odu OdiIrosun came with the orientation of ayewo, which is negative, right? So we know right there, Ifeanyi waving the red flag for us to let you know, hey, there's flashing lights here to say slow down, take your time. You're in a muddy place. You can't run. You got to go slowly, right? So that's what ayewo tells you. You got to investigate it. You got to look closely at what's going on. You got to take deliberate steps. And the manifestation of the negative energy is iku, which is death. So Ifa says we need to be on, staving off death. We need to be aware of the presence of death and taking account of basically the ways in which death would visit us, which is not something we typically like to think about, right? But if you've been here with me long enough, you know that my running analogy for all forms of ayewo is something that I picked up from trackers. When I used to teach outdoor education to the children, I used to follow the work of some trackers. And when you go out with the trackers into the field, trackers being animal trackers, and when you go out into the forest, the first thing that the trackers tell you are all the ayewo. They tell you all the ways that you could get sick, all the ways that you could hurt yourself, all the ways you could die. Why? Because once you understand the dangers and the hazards where all of the trouble spots are, you know what to avoid. You know what to look for. And now that you've been informed on all the dangers, then you can enjoy yourself. You can have a super good time and know, just don't go over to this point. And if you see one of these, then you turn around and go the opposite direction. So it's really advantageous to understand where the problems are. Okay, so that's how you protect yourself. There's a in the verse of Onwanri Meji that we are chanting. If you're at Onwanri Meji right now, then you'll know there's a line there that says Biorejo Bakwa Maashe Faniru. If you see a snake in the savannah, you don't grab him by the tail. If you see a snake in the savannah, you won't grab him by the tail, right? So you use good sense. You know this is a dangerous thing. Don't go grab it. So Ifa's saying, hey, in this season, in this cycle, be aware of the snake and don't grab it by the tail. Don't go looking for trouble, right? So that's the benefit of seeing this orientation, particularly at this time of the year. All right. So Ifa says, hey, you gotta be making sacrifice and keeping the observances to protect yourself from the threat of death. All right. So I don't want you to be panicked or paranoid or paralyzed by fear and apprehension about doing everything in life. You just need to understand that this is a time for you to be observing the dangers and the hazards and stay away from them, right? It's that simple. So Ifa says that um, we should sacrifice, um, and we should keep certain observances, which we will go into on Thursday, as well as the primary symbol. But the one thing that I do want to explore, um, before we dive right into the specific verse of Odu OdiIrosun, is the the kind of a profile of Odu OdiIrosun. One of the things that really characterizes this Odu and provides the primary theme for the Odu in question, and that is anxiety. Anxiety. OdiIrosun is synonymous with anxiety. It's synonymous with sleeplessness, sleepless nights, things that trouble your mind and keep you up at night. That is OdiIrosun. And that's part of the reason why I really, am talking about going into your family environment and and hanging out with your loved ones. It's a joyous occasion and experience, um, for the most part, I think for most of us. But likewise, it can be um, anxiety ridden as well. It could make you quite apprehensive and nervous, depending on what your family dynamics are. So, for anyone who has a certain amount of trepidation and anxiety about the holiday season and going into your, hanging out with all your cousins, your aunts, your uncles, your parents, your grandparents, whatever the case may be, this particular Odu really is speaking to you. But for all of us overall, whether the holidays is going to make any difference in your life directly, OdiIrosun is the resident Odu for this Itadogun cycle. And anxiety is, uh, um, it fills the environment. So now it's an appropriate time for each of us to register within ourselves, what's it like to feel anxious? Where do you go within yourself when you face anxious situations? Meaning, when you are faced with anxiety, do you become agitated? Do you become talkative? Do you become antsy? Do you spend money? Do you drink alcohol? Do you smoke weed? What do you do when your anxiety starts to peak? What do you do? Do you retreat and try to find a corner? Do you get aggressive and try to, like, pump your, you know what I'm saying? Like, in Spanish you say apantallar, so you try to, you know what I mean? Like, really project a big image of yourself because you're anxious and you're trying to compensate. What happens? Where do you go within yourself when you are facing feelings of anxiety? Okay. This is something that I want you to take into consideration for your own personal inventory. And you might recall some experiences that you've had wherein either everybody around you was anxious, maybe something was happening and you guys were going to a big event, maybe you were on a team or you were in the band, and you're going into some kind of a real tense environment, or maybe you were in school and it was very competitive and you guys were going into midterms or finals or something. Think of a time where you were really um, surrounded by tense anxiety. What happened? Where were you? Who were you with? What kinds of decisions did you make? And how did the experience shape your perception? How did the experience transform the way you engage and interact with the world? And this is really important for you to get the healing properties of the Odu. Part of Ifa is 8 million stories, right? There's all these stories, and there's all these verses, and there's all this medicine, and there's all these sacrifices and all these charms, and they talk about the stories of the Orisha, and all these things are happening. The tradition is super rich with content, right? But the thing that I always want you to emphasize, and this is in the study guide, of course, right? This is the theme that leads into the kind of the pre activities for the for going into the actual story itself. This theme of anxiety is important for you to, of course, like I said, take that personal inventory. But that key question of how did your experience with anxiety transform your experience? How did it shift the way you see the world and the way you see yourself? Why? Because the Odu is not just all of those things that I mentioned. This happened to this person, first, second, third, fourth, or this medicine happens here and that sacrifice is there, and you do this ritual, you do that ritual. It's not just that. The most important part of the Odu, of the verse of the Odu, is the pathway of transformation that it reveals. The most important part of the Odu is that it reveals a particular pathway of transformation. When you look at the protagonist goes through this sequence of experiences, at the end of those experiences, you got to know that the protagonist is different. All the people who are involved are different as a result of what has happened. If you're not different, then something's definitely wrong. You're not supposed to go through your day and have all these experiences, talk to all these people, make all these decisions, have all these emotions, think all these thoughts, and then wake up the next day unchanged. What are you doing? Okay? What are you doing? You got to soften up. You got to open up your heart and open up your mind in order to be transformed. That's why Ifa is speaking. That's why this theme of anxiety is present for us right now. We need to reconnect with this particular experience in order for us to grow, in order for us to improve, in order for us to become more whole. So that's the purpose of me asking you that very simple question. What is anxiety? How have you experienced anxiety? What was the setting? Who were you with? What happened? And most importantly, as a result of that experience, how were you transformed? How was your perspective changed? How were you a different person after the fact than you were before the fact? Okay. And how that experience played out is going to have a lot of influence on where you go when you face situations of anxiety. When I say where you go in your mind. What story do you start in your mind? What script, right? What story script automatically kicks off in your mind when you face anxiety? What does your self-talk sound like when you start to face anxiety? When you start to feel that anxiety in your chest, what kinds of dialogue or monologue starts in your mind? Right? Very important. Very important. Some of it may be super helpful. It's making you, go forward in leaps and bounds. Some of it may be detrimental. And this is an opportunity for you to make the distinction and start to make different kinds of choices, because anxiety is going to be a part of life. It's a part of reality. But what needs to change is our response to anxiety. What do we do? And how can we do it better? All right. So all of that leads us into our main story, our primary verse, our main lesson of Odu OdiIrosun. This Odu is filled with stories about anxiety, right? It's filled with stories about anxiety. And so was directed to choose the story of Ekun, the leopard, who was holding the assembly of all of the animals. Ekun the leopard was organizing and leading the assembly of all of the animals. Ifa is talking about people gathering. Ifa says that people are going to gather. You are going to be part of gatherings. You are going to be part of societies. You're going to be part of groups. And in those groups, in those gatherings, you need to be aware of the quality of the group. You need to be aware of your position in the group. You need to be attentive to who is the leadership of the group and how they are leading the group, and how you need to position yourself in such a way that your membership and participation in the group isn't detrimental to you. Because failure to do so is one of the ways that you could meet with your demise. If you associate in the group in the wrong way and you fall asleep behind the wheel, that is one of the ways a person would meet their demise. So when you talk about, like, what I mentioned about the trackers would tell you about the poison oak or the cliff, or where the lions or the wolves are. Okay, here Ifa is talking about one of the dangers is being in groups and not being aware of what kind of group you're in and who you're sharing the group with. So what happens? The animals are all coming together. They're gathering, they're meeting. And as the meetings are going on, Ekun starts making these innuendo. He says, yes, we're gonna get retribution on the heads of those with no arms and no feet. Blah 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 blah. And he continues to talk, and he's making other kinds of statements like this, suggestive statements, implying certain things. After a while, Igbi, the snail, started to think, I'm the only one. There's all kind of animals here, but I'm the only one who fits this description. I wonder if Ekun is talking about me. And so what does Igbi do? Igbi goes to see Orunmila. Orunmila casts Ifa for Igbi. Orunmila says, Igbi, you're a part of a group, and this group is detrimental. You need to make Ebo to protect yourself from Iku, death. And you need to stop going to that group. You need to stop going to those meetings, because it's going to cause you a significant loss, perhaps even your life. Igbi says, say less. He went and got the Ebo. He made the Ebo, but still Igbi was a part of the group. Igbi wanted to go, and he was compelled to visit the meeting one more time. When he went to the meeting, sure enough, Ekun saw him there, and he went on and did his regular Robert's Rule of Orders, right? What has to be done, and what the minutes of the day are, and what the agenda is, etc., etc. And then he starts making the main address, in the middle of which he says, yes, and we are going to cancel and collect all debts from those who have no hands and no feet. Then Igbi's eyes are totally open, and he says, yeah, well, just because one doesn't have hands or feet doesn't mean one doesn't have a good intellect. Ifa says that you're going to come to the point in the comings and goings of the group that it's going to reveal itself to you. You're going to get it. You're going to get it. You're going to figure it out, is what I mean. It's going to dawn on you. Oh, this is where I am. Oh, this is what you have planned for me. Oh, my suspicions have been confirmed. Ifa says that you're on the cusp of understanding exactly where you are and who you're with and what it means to you. And that's going to be enough for you to make your decisions accordingly. But for right now, you're just still a little bit curious. You still have some kind of doubt. You're nursing some kind of doubt that maybe perhaps it could be, how we do. We rationalize and we create all kinds of reasons why it might be something different than we think. It's not the obvious. Ifa says that you're going to figure it out though. In this iteration, you're going to see what the real deal is, and you're going to be able to make your decisions based on wisdom. But Ifa wants you to know that you're part of some kind of something, some kind of a group that is not in your best interest. So Igbi withdraws from the group. He doesn't go back in anymore. And when Igbi withdrew from the group, a lot of the other animals who knew Igbi was the subject of Ekun's innuendo, they all got that. They got permission to withdraw as well. And now that Igbi has figured it out, I am empowered to act accordingly. So more and more animals started to withdraw from the group. So what happens? Ekun now changes his attention. Given the fact that Igbi has stopped coming to the meetings, now he starts, he came up with a new strategy. He didn't continue with the innuendo. Then Ekun shifted to be a little bit more cunning. He went to the birds and he told the birds, go and fetch me some water, because in our next meeting, I'm going to roast water. And so the birds went and they fetched the water and they brought it to Ekun. But something in their mind, they were like Igbi too. He said, roasting water. Can you roast water? And I don't know. Maybe you can. Maybe it depends on what kind of water you get. I don't know. It could depend on what kind of pot you use. Or maybe it depends on how hot the fire is. There might be a way to roast water. I don't know. Let's see. While they're going back and forth, it dawns on one of them. You know what we should do? We should go and ask Oromila. He's wise. He will have an answer about this. So they went to go and consult Oromila. They said, Baba, we're here because, we've been going to the meetings with Ekun. And Ekun asked us to fetch water because he was going to roast water. And so we're torn on how that happens. Could you give us some insight? What does your wisdom tell us about roasting water? Oromila says, roast water. Okay. We don't have to speculate. Let's test it. Crank up the fire. So they cranked up the fire. Take some water. Sprinkle it on the fire. They take the water, they poured it onto the fire. Let's put the fire out. So Oromila says, so what's your conclusion? He said, you can't roast water. This is what we thought. You can't roast water. Oromila said, yeah, that's right. You cannot roast water. Good job. Congratulations. Now, crank up the fire. So they cranked up the fire. Now, y'all pluck out your feathers. They start plucking out their feathers. So now, put your feather on the fire. And they put their feathers on the fire. And what happened? They went up in flames instantly. He said, so, what's your conclusion? He said, the Ekun intends to roast us. That fire is not made for any water at all. That fire is made for us. Oromila said, okay, a word is enough for the wise. So the birds never returned to the meeting. By this time, the meeting had just been reduced to Ekun, Ajapa, the tortoise, and the water that the birds had drawn. Ajapa looked around and the writing was on the wall. He could see, it's just me and Ekun. So he got an idea. He says, Ekun, for today's meeting, I move that we shift the location of the meeting out here to the field. And he had some elaborate story as to why they should relocate the meeting for that day. And Ekun agreed, and they relocated to a place right by the bush, the brambles, And as soon as they got out there, Ajapa scrambled onto the bushes and into the ground he went. Disappeared. That left Ekun with nothing but water. Well, Ekun drank a little bit of water, but that was not enough to satisfy his hunger. So he vowed from that day forward, he was just going to lie in wait by the bush, and he was going to pounce on any animal that he could. From now on, everybody can get it. I'm not going to resort to no kind of cunning. I'm not going to make innuendo. Just when I see something that I want to eat, I'm going to jump out and I'm going to get it. And henceforth, Ekun became a super hunter, for which he is known to be today. Ifa says that you may be a little slow on the uptake. You may be reluctant to understand what kind of a society you live in. You may be even looking for different kinds of social proof to reveal to you or to affirm your belief and your suspicion about what's going on. But Ifa says when you get the indicators, you need to act accordingly, right? Where you see that this is a hostile environment and people or groups of people are subject to devour you at the, without the slightest warning, you need to protect yourself. You need to have the good sense to remove yourself from dangerous situations and environments, right? Now, sometimes you can't totally withdraw from the environment altogether, but you need to know how to read the room. You need to know how to determine when someone or when the climate has shifted from just tense to menacing, and from menacing to, just on the precipice of aggression, right? It doesn't serve you to be emotionally unaware, to lack emotional intelligence, as they would call it. You need to have a heightened sense of emotional intelligence, is what Odu OdiIrosun is telling us in this particular verse. Okay, where you go, for example, in this season, when it starts to escalate, when people are arguing back and forth, and you hear those key words, that's your cue. You need to go. If you're at the restaurant, if you're at the bar, if you're at someone's house, you're in the parking lot, you're in Walmart shopping, and you hear those words, or you hear that tone of voice, or you see that body language, and the next word is going to be go, meaning people are going to pounce on each other or pounce on you, you need to remove yourself from that environment. Don't overstay your welcome. Don't make excuses as to why you need to stay and stay and stay while the tension is escalating, and escalating. Because you will end up being the person who would be victimized. You could even be the person who would be targeted, right? You could even be the person who's targeted. So read the signs and tactfully, strategically, but swiftly remove yourself from harm's reach. It's one thing for somebody to sucker punch you once, but it's something else for someone to sucker punch you and then you're still standing around for the second shot. One is enough. One is enough. And it isn't going to serve you to be able to just have a sad story as to why this person is so wicked, or this situation was so unfair, or these people are so dangerous. No, that isn't what you're aspiring to. You're aspiring to move in and move out without being hurt. You're aspiring to be able to navigate the situation, attend, learn, grow, whatever it is that you're doing in that environment. But when it starts to reach that point of danger, you need to know when to fold them and walk out and walk away and disappear yourself and put yourself beyond the reach of danger. All right. So this is what Odu Irosun is offering to us in this particular Itadoku. Built into this message is, you see how the story unfolds in the different waves of animals withdraw, withdraw, withdraw. Ifa is letting us know that we're aware of the potential for aggression. The involved parties are one way or another communicating their intentions. They're letting it be known that somebody is the target. You might be the target, or it might be somebody else, but just the fact that they're talking about the target that way lets you know that somebody is being targeted. You need to accept that reality and not be so slow to act accordingly. Okay. Now, naturally, for me, I think about it in the macro, right? When I think about it in terms of our life here as Africans in America, that we live behind enemy lines. Our entire existence is behind enemy lines. And so the different kinds of organizations and institutions are put in place with a certain degree of hostility and aggression toward you. Once upon a time, our people knew this. Once upon a time, nobody would send you out of the house without letting you know, hey, don't forget where you are now. Don't forget with who you're dealing with now. You can laugh and joke, but don't play. This is serious business where you are. What you're doing is about something significant, and everybody knows who you are. You may not know who you are, but everybody else knows who you are. Everybody knows where you come from, right? I got my brothers out here talking about their Cherokees and Seminoles and Olmecs and everything under the sun. Oh, yeah. But ain't nobody else confused about who you are. You can tell yourself all kinds of stories about what you are, but everyone else is explicitly clear about who you are and how big the target is on your head. You are the one who needs to take that into consideration and accept it. That is your duty right now. At some point in your career, in your life, as an African in America, you got to say, you know what? I'm never going to be integrated into this thing. I'm never going to be assimilated into this thing. I'm never going to be accepted as just another person. If I have $100 or I have $100,000 or I have $1 billion, it isn't going to change the fact that I am an other in this environment. I need to accept that, and I need to act accordingly. For me, what I call it in a way the immigrant mindset. We've been here for 400 years, but you got to keep thinking like an immigrant. You got to always have it in your mind. I'm an immigrant. What does that mean? As an immigrant, I'm always Guatemalan. I'm always Jamaican. I'm always Korean. I'm always Japanese. I'm always Mexican. I'm always aware of the fact that my source is someplace else. And I'm sending money back. I'm buying land. I'm what I'm doing here in this space is very specific. It's very strategic. It's very deliberate. I'm not rocking the boat this way, and I'm not trying to make, I'm not under the delusion that at some point all of this is going to change and it's going to become like a love-in and everybody's going to just embrace me and make me the brother, make me the son, whatever. I'm doing what I can and I'm engaged while I'm here, but I know that there's a limit. I know that there's a limit. And I'm not letting other people draw the limit for me and dictate to me what that limit is. I myself, by acknowledging the limit from the beginning, I get to push the limit as far as I want to go. But I know that there is a limit. Part of the trouble that we have as African Americans, and we've had this since integration, is that we came to the conclusion that at some point we were going to stop being outsiders. That somehow, if they change the laws and we could go to school here and we could eat there and we could stay in hotels on this place and shop over there, that somehow that was going to eradicate all bias and all prejudice. And here we are 50 years later, and we can soundly say that that is not the case. That is not the case, and that is not going to be the case. And it's not something to lament and cry over. And more importantly, it's not something to continue to pretend is going to happen. That is all the animals thinking that leopard, Ekun, is might be talking about somebody else. Ekun might have meant something different when he said that he was going to be taking, collecting the debts on the heads of the ones who have no hands and no feet. He might have been talking about the snake. He might have been talking about the newt. He might have been talking about the fish. He might have, He's talking about all of y'all, but you first. We need to wake up and smell the coffee and act like we know. We're going to get more out of the situation when we position ourselves as people who are in by virtue of history, but not of. We are in it, but not of it. That's just a simple reality check. And if you go back to the days when we understood this, into let's say pre-integration days, go look and see how many hotels we had in the 40s. Go see how many stores we had, how many restaurants we had, how many boutiques we had, how many doctors lived in our neighborhoods. Go ask your grandparents and your great-grandparents, how many doctors, how many lawyers, how many nurses. Go back to the time when if you got out of line at 8 o'clock in the morning, by the time you got home at the end of school, everybody in the neighborhood and your parents knew what you did, and there wasn't no phone. Right? This is true. This is real. This is real, like what our culture was once upon a time. Go back to the time when like 85% of our homes were mother, father intact. Y'all know we were the most married people in America up until like the 60s. Do y'all know that? We were the most married people in the country. The first thing that our people would do when slavery ended, the first thing, what did people do when slavery ended? The man would go look for his wife. They would then go look for their children. These are people who couldn't read. These are people who had to move with great care from county to county. In the era of Jim Crow and sharecropping and all of that, they were going however far they needed to go to put their families back together. And they did it. So that by the time we were in the 50s, we were the most unified families in the country. We became assimilated, or we became integrated, and then we started to assimilate. And what happened? The first thing we did was saw our families unraveled. That's an assault. That's an assault. That is the leopard attacking you. That is the leopard saying, I'm going to collect debts on the ones with no hands and no feet. The things that we're living today, the calamities that define our lifestyles today in Detroit, in Milwaukee, in Jacksonville, in Charleston, in Atlanta, in New York, in LA, in Oakland, in Dallas, in Houston. You see, I can talk like this with I can name any city where we are, and I can tell you that it's characterized by calamity and disaster. I don't have to be a sociologist to be able to tell. I don't need statistics and numbers or any of that. I can tell you because I've been and I've seen it, and you've been and you see it. You're in those cities. If I'm lying, you'll tell me. The hood is synonymous with disaster and calamity. But in 1940, that same hood, they were the men and the women were wearing fine suits and a dashing hat, going into the jazz club or the blues club to listen to some music played by some well-trained black musicians in all of those cities I just named. The hood used to be a place of refinement when we owned it and controlled it. When we understood who we were and who they were, and we were comfortable with letting them have their side and we have our side. We were taking care of business for ourselves. We were solving our own problems. When the writing was on the wall and you knew what a leopard was, a leopard is a leopard. And you're not going to pass a law and now the leopard is friendly. Oh, leopards love us now. What are you saying? What kind of a nonsense are you saying? The leopards are vegetarians now. They're vegans. They don't eat people. Are you insane? Are you crazy? Leopards are leopards. They eat meat. They pounce on animals and eat them. If you run up a tree, he'll get you. If you jump in the water, he'll get you. A leopard is a super hunter. You don't change the law of leopardness with paper. You don't sign in legislation that changes a leopard into a rabbit. That's not what's going to happen. So allow me to tell you that part of what you need to understand about Odu OdiIrosun is that you need to wake up and smell the coffee. You need to act like you know. You need to tap into your ancestral memory and ask your ancestors in this season, when you go and you talk to your family, you go to Christmas dinner and you sit down, you talk to your elders about what it was like once upon a time when we ran the show. What was it like? When we were the principal of the school and the police chief and the doctor and the lawyer and the nurse and the nanny, when we did all those things in our own neighborhoods, what was the reality? What was the quality of life? Why did you do it that way? How did you understand the relationship between people of African descent and people not of African descent? Just break it down for me. What did you know? And they'll make it very simple and very plain for you. There's things that they knew and understood and accepted and just were not negotiable. They weren't deluding themselves. Part of our dilemma today is we're deluding ourselves and believing that we have all these options that we don't really have. Because what we're choosing is to put ourselves in harm's reach. The people who have endangered us for 400 years by us not taking care of business, by us not having a bank, not having a church, not having a bank, not having a farm, not having a supermarket, not having a clinic, not having a school. You know what we did? We said that the people, the only sworn enemy that we've had for 500 years, who dragged us from the motherland and brought us over here and has treated us like anything but a child of God for 500 consecutive years, we're going to entrust that person to educate us and heal us and guide us. And that's what you're saying by default. By refusing to build it for ourselves, we're saying that we trust that they're going to do it. We're believing that legislation is going to change a leopard into something other than a leopard. Your great-grandfather would laugh at you. Your great-grandmother would just shake her head in disbelief. Lord, I do not know who these people are. Where did I go wrong? I thought I taught them better than that. We need to wake up. We need to stand on our own 2 feet. We need to accept it is what it is, and nothing's going to change it from being what it is, except us. If you want to believe, if you want to believe that it can be better and that everybody is fair and altruistic, okay, great. But it's only going to become realized to the extent that we are ready, willing, and able to put our hands onto the situation and make it what we need it to be. As long as somebody else is making it for us, it's going to suit that somebody else's agenda. Sure, there will be a school in your environment, but your school is going to serve my agenda. Oh, sure, there will be a hospital in your environment, but your hospital is going to suit my environment, my agenda. Of course, we'll assign you a police chief and a superintendent of schools. We'll assign you one, but your superintendent of schools is going to serve our agenda. That's what we have today. We have people who have been placed into positions. They've been given to us, like they give us leaders and give us representatives and give us spokesmen, basketball players. My people right now all worked up because Deion Sanders left from one football team to another football team. But we got Kamala. Who's our person in the White House, who coming into it said, I can't do nothing just exclusively for black folks. Oh, no. I won't do that. But today, I just saw him sign over $1 billion for the Native American rehab program. Go look it up. Today, Biden signed in some legislation for $1 billion. Within the same term where Kamala told you coming in that she wasn't going to do nothing just for us. How is it possible? Because these are the people that are given to us, assigned to us. Those are our handlers. Those aren't the people that we pick from our ranks and elevate to the position of leadership and responsibility for the things that we want to happen. There's a radical difference between the two. We need to appreciate that difference. And we need to act accordingly. Because all of this belief and prayer and faith in what someone else is going to do, it's not going to work. It's foolish. It's foolish. We have more than enough evidence to assure us that this big meeting that we're calling the big assimilated America, it might work for us the way we want it to, perhaps. But only if we make it work. And part of making it work means being able. See, you're only free to the extent that you can opt out. I want you to remember that. When you say, yeah, I'm going to opt out of their work system. I'm not going to go to work there anymore. I'm not going to go there. When you can opt out of going to work, going downtown, then you have freedom. When you can opt out of eating the way they eat, then you're free. When you can opt out of dressing the way that they say you got to dress, then you're free. When you can opt out of wearing your hair the way that they say you can wear your hair, then you're free. When you can opt out of their voting system, but still get your agenda moving forward, then you're free. Y'all know that the Asians have the lowest voter turnout? You know that? Go look it up. Asians have the lowest voter turnout. They don't vote. They're not voting Chinatown into existence. They got banks. And they're spending their money with each other. The money bounces in their community something like 13 times before it escapes. That means that money is passing from one Asian hand to the next 13 different times. They're enriching one another. If there's $1 billion in that community, that $1 billion is going to move around there for years before it makes its way out. We got $1 billion, but it goes out within days. So we can't opt out. That makes us subject to everybody else's agenda because they know you can't opt out. Yet, though the animals withdrawing from the meeting is them exercising their ability to opt out. We can choose not to go to this meeting, and it's not going to stop us from being fish. It's not going to stop us from being snakes. It's not going to prevent us from being birds. It's not going to have any ill effect on our ability to be tortoises. We can keep doing what we do. The meeting is optional. I hope y'all understand what I'm saying to you. I hope you understand what I'm saying to you. Yoruba civilization is independent. This is not just about religion and making prayers and making sacrifices. Ogun works. Shango works. Obatala works. They are captains of industry. When you go into the history and you look at Yoruba civilization, you will see the best thing you could read is Clapperton's account of Abeokuta. Go search Clapperton's account of Abeokuta. I've forgotten the year. It's 17 something. Clapperton goes and he talks about, Clapperton was his Scottish explorer. And he tells about how when he reached Abeokuta, Abeokuta is magnificent. It's hilly. So when you go out and you get up onto a hill of Abeokuta, you can see, So he talks about going to Abeokuta and he goes up on this hill and he looks down onto the market. And he said, what my eyes saw disabused my mind of all notions that I had of Africa. They were not naked and unbridled savages running about. They were finely dressed with nicely straight streets, and the market was filled with every variety of craft. Some made pins, and some made locks, and some made keys, and some made knives and machetes and hoes. There were people, and he starts going down the list of all of the things that were being made before the white man arrived. The Yoruba are industrious and urban, with a very sophisticated political system, with a very sophisticated economic system. The indigenous knowledge system of Yoruba land is, by definition, independent. It is self-sufficient. When you practice Orisha lifestyle at the highest level, it must restore the culture. It must restore the civilization. It must return to you the ability to produce and choose the extent to which you are going to engage in the white man's society. This is a process of re-Africanization, reclaiming true power. Withdrawing from the meeting is withdrawing from a system of oppression and cultivating and building the system that truly enriches and empowers you as a person of African descent. But it must be done on your own terms. As long as you insist on letting someone else build it for you, what they build will meet their criteria. It will satisfy their needs. First and second and third. And then after the fact, it might leave something for you. Odu OdiIrosun is letting you know that your anxiety is rooted in the understanding that you are part of a system that doesn't work for you. This is why Dr. King said, I fear that I have integrated my people into a burning house. I fear that I have integrated my people into a burning house. He's facing the leopard. And he knew he was mistaken by leading us into the house of the leopard, abandoning our house to go into the house of the leopard. OdiIrosun is saying, pull out, back up, hold it. There's only one. This only ends one way. They eat you. Okay? This is our ancestral knowledge. There is no such thing as a happy, well-adjusted, and contented slave. It does not exist. It's a total oxymoron. And if you cannot opt out, you are enslaved. We've got to be able to create for ourselves strategically, step by step, the capacity to opt out. We've got to pledge to our children and our children's children that as time progresses, they will have the opportunity to opt out. Yes, you could go to work over there if you want to, but you don't have to. You could go to school over there if you want to, but you don't have to. Right now, we've created a situation where the leopard is devouring us. And we don't even have the inkling of where to begin to do something different. All we can do is beg. Please don't eat us no more. Please don't eat us no more. Please don't eat us no more. But they're leopard. They're going to eat you. Begging isn't appealing to morality. Those things that's irrelevant. That's irrelevant. You're a cash cow. You're a renewable source of energy and food. Whether you like it or not. That's where we are right now. That's where we are right now. That's our position right now. But OdiIrosun is saying that you already know this. That's why OdiIrosun is synonymous with anxiety. You may not have connected all the dots between how come I'm not quite at ease? How come I'm not even if I have money? I've mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again. This is the perfect scenario. The Ellis Coes wrote a book called Rage of a Privileged Class. Rage of a Privileged Class by Ellis Coes. Magnificent book. Ellis Coes was like a staff writer for the Times or something like that, but he ended up doing all this research on black professionals, really, really successful, upperly mobile black professionals, people who had law firms in Manhattan and really successful black people. And this is the rage of a privileged class. These people were furious. They got all the money, they got prestige, they got position, they've got whatever you could ask for from an assimilated, from an an integrated society. All the benefits of integration have befallen them. They were well-to-do and furious. They were suffering from the anxiety that is OdiIrosun. The rage of a privileged class is OdiIrosun. Why are they anxious? Why are they angry? Because no matter how successful they are, they know that at any point they could be devoured. One of the stories he tells is of the brother who had some kind of a top law firm. He was, to be a partner in a firm is a big deal. He's one of, it's like Johnson and Smith. You see those kind of law firms, Johnson and Smith, Esquire or whatever. He was Johnson. It was his firm. He gets in there early one day. He's in the elevator. He's riding up the elevator, and there's a young white guy who's the male guy or something like this. And the head of the firm has to have a key or something to even get into the elevator to go to this level. He starts to go out onto the floor, onto his firm, and the young white dude blocks him. Can I help you? Do you belong here? That's could you imagine? You're at your house. Speaking of which, remember when Henry Louis Gates got arrested at his own house? Professor Henry Louis Gates at Harvard University. Y'all remember that? About 6, 7 years ago? Go look it up. Henry Louis Gates got arrested at his own house, in his own house, going into his own house. Go look up all the countless the black business owners who were in their business after hours, guys moving into the department, get arrested. It's not funny. It's ridiculous. But it's that simple. That's the leopard. It doesn't even have to be you know what I mean? It's the mail boy. It's somebody who's in no way, shape, or form qualified to even speak to this person, let alone question and challenge him. But they get him arrested. So you already know this. This is the unidentified, unnamed anxiety that you walk with and live with every day of your life. And you normalize it. You do all this stuff. You name your child things so that they can go get jobs with the white people. You think about how you're going to name your child in a way that she can go get a job. So you know it's wrong. You know where your anxiety comes from. You know where that tension in your chest comes from. You know where that knot in your back comes from. It comes from you kowtowing, bending all day, every day to accommodate people who don't give a rat's tail about your comfort or your humanity. All they want to do is fatten you up to eat you at the end of the day. Period. End of story. If you think otherwise, you need to wake up and smell the coffee. OdiIrosun says you need to get clear about the source of your anxiety and act accordingly. Find a way to withdraw. Start making strategic and deliberate moves toward withdrawing. Make a plan for you and your family to withdraw. Give your people options to choose the extent to which they will engage with this society. Don't just throw them in and hope that they swim. Let's hope that they make it again and again and again. That's why we're being eaten. That's why we're being consumed. That's why they can tell us, oh yeah, we're gonna roast water. We're gonna roast water. Go get me some water. I'm gonna roast water, and we going to get the water. That's us. Your common sense tells you can't roast water, but you steadily doing it because that's your job. You know you can't roast water. You know that's not possible. But that's your job. That's where you work. This is what your assignment is. So you go along with it and you do it. But in your heart, you know it's wrong. You know it's nonsense. You know it makes absolutely no sense at all and doesn't add any value to you and who you're really here to serve. That is the source of your anxiety. That's why you're really frustrated. That's why you're angry. Because you're not dealing with the real problem. You're getting a little bit comfort and convenience, but you know it's not solving your problem. Let's get the real solution to our problem and make explicit plans and moves toward withdrawal. Just think about the concept. What kind of relief do you get from the idea of being able to fully withdraw and pick the extent to which you engage with the mainstream society? What if you didn't have to go to work with them? What if you didn't have to go to their court? What if you didn't have to go to their supermarket? What if you didn't have to go to their school? Imagine. Can you imagine a life of not having to go and participate, engage with the system that as it is? Can you imagine? Can you envision such a thing? Is it possible in your mind to be totally off the grid and independent? And if not totally, to a degree. Where I live right now, there's a little town right next door. So I live in Stone Mountain, but right next to me is a little tiny town called Pine Lake. I don't know, Pine Lake might have, I don't know, it might have 10,000 inhabitants, but they got their own little post office. They got their own little police station. It's not a subdivision. It's a little tiny town. Like I said, there might be 10,000 people. Why don't we have little towns of little 10,000 people with our own little mayor and our own police chief and our own superintendent of schools? Why don't we have that? Why isn't that a craze after 50 years of integration where we have all the expertise in the world? How come there is no deliberate movement for us to have our own independent societies? Why is that? Why is it our children are being harassed in school all over the country, but we don't have a movement for independent schools? Why is that? Why isn't there a network of independent Black schools with all these educated Black people working in thousands and thousands and thousands of schools around the country, but we don't have a solid independent Black school movement? Why? How is that possible? It's not illegal. It's not, right? It's not breaking any rule. People doing it all the time. Just seceding and annexing and all that. How is it possible that we're not in any way engaged in that kind of a movement? Why is there no evidence of us withdrawing, even though this system and process clearly works against us? Why? Why? These are questions that you really got to ask yourself. These are questions that your ancestors are going to ask for you. Are you tuning your ears to those questions that the ancestors are putting to you? Your ancestors were freedom fighters. Your ancestors were independent. Your ancestors could take care of themselves. They made their own clothes. They grew their own food. They built their own houses. Listen, there's a group of African Americans in the war of there was a war of, I think, 1812 between England and the United States, before it was really the United States, obviously. And England was over here fighting against the Americans. I don't know what they were fighting for, but they were trying to get some kind of territory, obviously. So the English come over here and they say to the Africans, hey, if you guys fight for us against the Americans, we will give you freedom. So the Africans was like, yeah, I get to shoot at white folks and I get to go and I get to get free. Yeah. So they did. They fought. They lost. The English lost. But the English still honored their agreement. Problem was, you couldn't have these. There was like thousands, like maybe 1,500, 1,600 freed Africans now. So you couldn't just have them here. So they started to take them to different places in the English influence. They ended up going, the majority of them, to Trinidad. In Trinidad, They couldn't, slavery was still going in Trinidad, so they couldn't drop them off in like Port of Spain. They took them to the south of Trinidad. And they dropped them off, it was just bush. Just bush. These people cleared the land and built houses and created they're called the Americans. Merikan. Ken. Americans. Merikens. The Americans. That's what they call them. The Americans are synonymous with self-sufficiency, independence, African spirituality, natural medicine. When you say you're American, that means in Trinidad, they exist today. There's still a kind of a strain of Trinidadian people. I'm descended from Americans. To say you're American is to say that you are the most hardworking, industrious, natural Africans on the island. That's what the Americans are known for. Your ancestors are that's the same group. They just took black folks from here who fought and took them down there. It wasn't no selected special group. It was just like everybody who said, yeah, I'll go. It's emblematic of the mood and the momentum and the vibe of our culture at that time, at the turn of the century. Your ancestors are independent. They're hardworking. They're industrious. That's our DNA. That's who we are. That's what characterizes us. That's the only way we really know how to get down. That's the truest expression of our identity. Independent, hardworking, strong, bold. That's us. So I know your ancestors are giving you the messages. I know that it's coming through. It's coming through your dreams. It's coming through your interactions with your family members. But you got to tune your perception. And as we're going into the holiday season, this is super important because you got to be able to see all those people in your family for what they really are. Frustrated freedom fighters. The anxiety and the frustration and the angst that characterizes so many of our lives is the result of us knowing that we're supposed to be free and independent, but we're operating with this fantasy that somebody else is going to work it out for us. But we keep getting evidence that that's not going to be the case. But in spite of that, we keep going back and we keep showing up at the meeting, and the leopard keeps threatening us, and the leopard keeps menacing, and the leopard keeps grabbing us, snatching us, eating us up, shooting us, hands up. No, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's nothing you could do. You couldn't be any more harmless. You couldn't be any more docile. You couldn't be any more agreeable. You couldn't be any more accommodating. That's why you're frustrated. Because you know what the real option for you is. You know it boils down to. But you're waiting for, like Igbean, when Igbean pulled back, and then everybody else was like, right. That's right. We have options. We don't have to keep coming to the meeting and wondering if the leopard is going to target us next. We could just pull out. That's why you're frustrated. I'll be your Igbean, okay? It's time for us to withdraw. Now, I don't mean quit your job tomorrow and go live out in the woods of Montana. I mean, start making a plan. Put it into your mind that your goal, this is where your immigrant mindset comes. You know, you got to think, hey, man, I'm getting up out of here. I'm getting up out of here. This ain't the only show in town. These people don't have a monopoly on my life. I gotta live and die under your rules and according to your dreams and your aspirations, and all your goals and my goals, and all your values and my values, and the only thing I can hope to be is what you gonna be and what you say I can be. No. The only way for you to really relieve that anxiety is to create a real plan to withdraw. By such and such a time, my family will be out. We will have the option. If they want to go back and live in Nigeria, there will be land there. If they want to go and live in the Caribbean, there will be land there. If they want to go and be in South America, there will be land there with our name on it. The other day, I was watching a young Jewish guy, and he was saying how I myself, as a Jew, this dude was probably like in his early 30s. I myself, as a Jew, know that I can land in any city in the world, and I can go and find a synagogue, and I can find people who've never met me, and they will give me a place to sleep. They will give me money. They will help me find work. And whatever else I need to get started, I know I can go there. Matter of factly, he just said that's the reality. See, he can withdraw because he's a part of a whole network that is totally independent of whatever mainstream other network. Venezuela, Mexico, Spain, Germany, England, France, United States, Australia, you name it. He knows that there's a whole other grid that he can go be a part of. He can withdraw. So his anxiety is less than yours and less than mine. That's what I'm talking about. The only way you're going to fully get rid of that anxiety is by being able to exercise the reality of choices and options, being able to opt out. Not fuss, not fight, not beg, not plead. Just say, thank you very much. That'll be all for me. Goodbye. And leave. Imagine that. Imagine that. Everywhere you go and everything you do in America, in this country, you say, yeah, okay, that'll be enough. Thank you. You pack your stuff and you leave. End of story. You don't have to tell them where you're going. You don't have to ask permission. You just leave because you have that option. That's going to reduce your anxiety considerably. I feel more relaxed just saying it. Practice that a couple of days. Just envision yourself. They start acting crazy and giving you a hard time. You see them doing this and doing that. You be like, oh man, these people tripping again. You know what? I've had about enough. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye. You just turn around and walk away. Pack your suitcase and you leave. Poof. Poof. No marching, no protesting, none of this other stuff. Odu OdiIrosun is providing us a reality check. It's time for us to reduce our anxiety. It's time for us to reduce our anxiety. And I want to urge you to talk to your family. When you go to the Christmas break, talk to your family. Talk about how your grandparents lived. Talk about how your great-grandparents lived. Talk about the things that they used to make. Talk about the way that they used to have a hustle. Everybody, what they could build, what they could make. All the ways that they could take care of themselves. Talk to your family about all the different ways that your grandparents and your great-grandparents could take care of themselves. Who could make soap? How many dishes could so-and-so make? Who could build a house? Who could make clothes? Tell me how so-and-so got her prom dress made again. Tell me who used to make shoes. Tell me about who used to keep animals. Who could keep horses? Who could keep pigs? Who could keep dogs? Who could keep birds? Talk to your family about who you are and what you really are capable of. You'll be surprised at how many tricks you got up your sleeve. You'll be surprised. You come from a very capable people. This is what Booker T. Washington was telling us all along. You are the most capable. All of the means of production are in your hands. Anything that needs to be done, built, fixed, you do it. You have the capacity to do it. That's going to reduce your anxiety considerably. The extent to which you exercise your ability to do for yourself. That's going to reduce your anxiety considerably. All right. That is our Odu study group for this evening, ladies and gentlemen. I wish you a super duper happy holiday. I pray that the word and the wisdom of your ancestors will touch you, will move you, will guide you, will empower and inspire you to take a stand for the ancestral promise, to find the boldness and the willingness within yourself to chart a course that's independent of what has been presented to you. I pray that you find within yourself the love of freedom that will compel you to do whatever is necessary to remove yourself from the claws of the leopard, to remove yourself from the menacing gaze of your oppressor, and to use everything within your capacity, all of your natural resources, all of your natural gifts and talents to create an alternative for yourself and for your children and your children's children. I pray that that spirit will permeate every fiber of your being as you go through this holiday season, and that you make that infectious in your family members, that you and your cousins and your aunts and your uncles and your parents and your grandparents get all excited and worked up about the time that they remember when we could do everything for ourselves and we could opt out at any point. I thank you for your time and your attention, and I look forward to talking to you all again in the days to come. Tomorrow is we're going to do our Oya